Hello, hello, hello. So here I am live again at night. A bit tired, but here we go. So to catch up, I'm now 15. I'm still living in Punta Gorda in the southernmost part, almost the totally southernmost part of the nation of Belize in Central America. I'm living there without family and really without adult supervision and doing whatever. Okay. And so now we start the new thing. My parents are coming down to visit me in Belize City. Um, they yeah, so they're coming for a short visit to Belize City, and so I'm going to go there. Um, so I got on the bus again, which was a converted. It was not really converted. It was a school bus with no bathroom, and it went up that bumpy dirt road called the Hummingbird Highway for hours until we reached Belize City. And I managed. There was no such thing as youth hostels, but I found something kind of similar. It was well, anyway, it was a room with multiple beds and other travelers besides me. It happened to be two young German women, and we were in the same room. I think I asked one of them, "Do you like Germany?" Which was a totally stupid thing to say. Ask someone whether they like their own country. But then, yeah, so not too smooth on that. Anywho, but I had a place to stay. So I went out and I met some Belizean teenagers and I hung out with them. I bought some weed. I smoked some weed and I bought some weed. And then I guess the next day I went to the hotel, of course, a nicer hotel that my parents were staying in, my mother and stepfather. And my stepfather hadn't been to Belize much except for a short visit when I was 6. But yeah, so I said hi to them and I told them that I had scored some weed, the 25-cent gram buds of weed wrapped in brown paper, and they were happy about that. So we smoked some. So yeah, I copped dope for my parents. And they said that the next day we were going to rent a boat to take a day trip back to Gails Point. Now, for those of you who've not been following me the whole way, I lived in Belize when I was about 4, some of the time with my father in Belize City, and some of the time in Gails Point with my mom and her boyfriend that I don't remember at all. And so, this was all like nostalgic to go back to a place that I remembered a lot, but from the point of view of a very young child. So they happen to still know a guy who did boating, who would take a chartered boat out. And so they contacted him again, and of course he was happy to do it. And so we took the boat, a sailboat this time, a sailboat to Gails Point, and somewhere along the line we smoked more weed. Anyway, we went through this mangrove swamp. I mean, not a swamp. It was what they call wetlands. So it was seawater. But what I meant to say was a mangrove maze. I could see why they needed to charter someone who knew the area, and also why the area was so popular for pirates back in the day, because it was kind of confusing, and all around these mangrove clumps that grew right out of the water, out of the the shallow seawater, and I could see how somebody could easily get lost, or at least not find the place you were hiding at if they didn't really know the area. So eventually we got to Gails Point, and I was able to see it from a 15-year-old's point of view rather than a 4-year-old's point of view. And well, one thing I noticed, which I've mentioned before, was that the people there, probably because of its isolation, were quite dark, and they didn't look exactly like the Garifuna, who have mixed African and Native American blood and possibly other stuff. But they really looked more like pure Africans. So that was interesting. That's who I'd been living amongst when I was 4. We took the boat back, and maybe that's when we smoked the weed. At some point, I covered myself with a part of a sail as if it was a blanket, and fell asleep on the way back. So, and that was that. I don't think they stayed very long, my mother and stepfather. I was sort of left on my own. Well, I was left on my own in Belize City to do as I wished for the rest of the time, until I chose to go back on the bus to Punta Gorda. The bus, there were limitations on when I went, because the bus back then only made the trip twice a week. So I guess I had to wait a couple more days. While I was there was this man who asked me if I wanted to buy some cocaine. I had used a small amount of it back in Sausalito, just once, I think, and never in Belize. And he said he had a testing kit, so he could show me that it was pure by testing it in front of me. I really didn't know how to interpret whether that was true or not, so I just said, I said, no, that's all right. And I said, I don't know, not that much. And I took it back with me to Punta Gorda. While I was in Punta Gorda, I managed to score more drugs. This time I scored from some Mayans. I scored a large, like an ounce size, not a gram size this time, but an ounce sized bud of weed. So I was intending to go to Guatemala for a longer period of time, and I found a way to do it. There were these traveling musicians who had chartered a boat first to the Garifuna village of Barranco, and then to the primarily Guatemalan village, I guess, of village, small town, yeah, of Livingston across the bay. I remember hearing them. They were busking. I don't think they made much, and Central America is not exactly wealthy. But they were performing live anyway, and they sang what I would call classic Americana. The one song I remember went, "We fired our guns and the British kept it coming. Wasn't quite as many as there was a while ago." And so forth. This was in Belize, which was still a British colony at the time. So I don't know, and moving towards independence. So maybe they related a little if they really understood that it was about the American Revolution. So then they got a ride in this chartered boat, which was a dory, so a hardwood canoe, Garifuna style, carved out of one mahogany branch. And we went to the town of Barranco, where we stayed with some friends, which I had stayed with before, that would live there. It was a white couple and a white man with a Salvadorian wife and two little toddler daughters between them. And so this time we all stayed there. Now, there's a general rule there, which is not unreasonable, that you're supposed to pay. In those days, it was $2.50 to stay there, which included food and so forth. And so I shared my weed with them, and I kind of got the idea that because I was doing that, I didn't have to pay the $2.50. So I got high and read this really trashy American paperback that I'd somehow gotten a hold of, which I won't even bother describing. And then I also tried the Coke. One of the musicians, I offered him some, and he sniffed it, and he said, "Yeah, no." He said, "I've done a lot of cocaine, and it has a distinctive smell, just like peanut butter does. And this isn't it." So he didn't sniff any. I did. And I guess it made me mildly nervous, or, mildly energetic and jangly. Maybe it was cut with ephedrine. Maybe it was ephedrine cut with something else. I don't know. But it wasn't Coke, or at least not much of it. I remember going out, walking around Barranco, and as I mentioned, there was a big gap between preteens and elderly people there, because the young people left to go to school because they didn't have a high school, and the majority of them didn't come back, or at least not for very long. So I was walking around, and there was this small group of Garifuna preteen girls, and one of them, they were looking at me, and one of them said, "He looked good, gal." I think I mentioned that already. Oh, well, my vanity compels me to keep mentioning it. It was a kind of a pleasant moment. And so I think I had the good sense to somehow get rid of all my illegal drugs while I was in Barranco, whether I used them all, gave them away, tossed them, whatever, so that I would not have them when we went on to Guatemala, which was very sensible because, yeah, Guatemala back then was, I would say, fascist, and I would categorize it as pretty much that. And you don't want to get in trouble for smuggling drugs in a situation like that. So we arrived for the second time. I arrived in Livingston after we went, in the same dory across the Bay of Honduras. It had a motor, I think. And I felt this same sense of wonder when I arrived. Basically, when you arrive, there's this hill with a paved road. It goes up this, it's really steep, and it goes straight up. You can see the road to the top of the hill and not much past that. And yeah, and then on top of that, there's a statue some guy, I don't know who, but for me at that age, it was just kind of awesome to just arrive and see that, and then walk up that road and see the whole town of Livingston. And I'm actually kind of tired tonight, so I think I'll make this a short one because I'm going to get into next my 2-month stay in Guatemala. Maybe there's some other flashback, I think, is one is in the back of my mind, but that's basically what we're going to get into next time. So have a good night, and like that. Bye.